Oh, hello, and welcome to Momentous Live, episode 137. I'm barely Tristan Jutra.
I'm fully William Silver, otherwise
Excellent.
known as Will Silver.
And we have 0% Tasia Custodi and 0% Gray Williams this evening. Tasia's still off for a few weeks, attending to other matters, and Gray is a lot under the weather. So, it was a game time decision for him. And it's just Will and I today. No guests.
Whoop.
Maybe we'll have guests once in a while. We like to give them a little bit more notice. But just the two of us. Well, we can do this. I think this might be one of those episodes where people need to crank up the speed on their podcast player because I think I'm going to be speaking pretty slowly. I finally succumbed and meds are happening now. Yeah. So let's get into it, shall we?
Let's do it.
I always forget the screen sharing. So everyone can see what we're talking about here. We'll start with a little bit of follow-up. A few weeks ago, Sony... I'm going to be muting myself once in a while you're talking to Will. Sony announced the PlayStation Portal, which, looks super cool. And it looked like the sequel to the PSP, the PlayStation Portable, and the PS Vita, or the PlayStation Vita. And I never got a Vita, but I really enjoy the PSP, which I was gifted by a friend of the show, Chris, who's currently in Poland. He gave me his old one, and I really enjoyed it. I just play a couple of games on it, and that's a machine that's probably pushing 15 years old now. Skip the Vita, but I thought, well, the PS5 is pretty cool, and this PlayStation Portal's kind of got the same design aesthetic, and it's pretty powerful. I'm not a huge gamer guy, but maybe I could be swayed. But then, Will, it became clear that this is not a portable handheld device in the same way that, say, a Nintendo Switch or the PS Vita or even a Steam Deck are. This is a little bit different angle to this. And as such, I'll let you explain what makes it different, but as such, some of the reviews are starting to come in. Like, people are saying that, it's generally very nicely built, reasonably powerful, but people are wondering, like, who's it actually for? So this isn't totally standalone, Will. What makes it different than the previous generation?
Yeah, it's kind of like a solution looking for a problem. It's basically it's a streaming device, I guess, essentially you could say. And what it does is you need a PlayStation 5 and you need it to be running, which is, to me, another thing that's really strange. And basically it just streams it into this handheld device. Now, things like the Nintendo Switch, they have some of these functionality where you can kind of plug it in or play it separately, but it doesn't require like another thing running. This is basically just a handheld streaming device. As such, it doesn't need as much hardware. Apparently it's light. It doesn't require as much battery power, so the battery tends to last longer. So there are some pluses there for it being such a light form factor. But this is a very particular solution to a very particular need and or problem. And I think it's hitting the wrong note. I don't think it's what people want. Now, I may be just biased, but even some of the reviews are kind of saying that it's sort of like I said, a solution looking for a problem. It doesn't seem like a great idea. This is not what the Steam Deck does. This is not what the Switch does. This isn't what some of the other there's a few other devices in these spaces or in the space, and yeah, it's very odd. There definitely is a need, I think, for devices that connect into this new ecosystem of online digital stores, which is kind of what the Steam Deck does, and essentially also what I'm a broken record, the Nintendo Switch does as well. It logs into the Nintendo store and you download games on it. I could see there being a need for that for PlayStation, but that's not what this is. So it really is a little bit head scratching. It looks cool. It does cool stuff, but not really the cool stuff that you would expect it was going to do.
And so I think that's important to know if anyone is thinking of getting this as a gift for the holiday season for loved ones, that they the recipient has to have a PS5 to make this work. And this is we saw this sort of functionality with the PSP, the PlayStation Portable, and how you
Yeah.
could stream stuff from the PlayStation 3, the PS3. I imagine, I didn't try it myself, but I imagine the PS4 and the PlayStation Vita could do the same thing, where you could stream games from the console to the handheld. But the difference in this case with the PlayStation Portal is that that's not only an option, it's the only way it operates. It is. So
Yeah.
if you wanted to take it on a bus or something, you can't take any games with you,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
sort of a bummer.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I know a bunch of, people who have Steam Decks who, yes, they use them where there's Wi-Fi, but they also use them, like, on the bus,
Mhm.
and things like this. My nephews, I think they're too old and too cool now, but they had Nintendo Switches that they used to bring everywhere. Like, they just play them in the back of, the minivan while they were being driven around. Like, they use those things everywhere. So, it doesn't seem to lend itself to those things. I know it's not PlayStation games aren't necessarily casual games, but again, I don't think they're giving themselves enough credit or enough room to grow. I mean, things like the Steam store do really well because they have, Baldur's Gate or something like that, and Starfield and things like that. But they also have things like Pizza Tower and Castle Crashers and things that are sort of smaller, quick play games kind of
Mhm.
thing, or
Mhm.
games that lend themselves to more of a portable market. So, yeah, I mean, I think there's they're selling themselves short too as well to not have a device that utilizes games in their store, and if they're just selling AAA titles, then that's going to be a bit of a detriment in the long term. Right now, it's fine
Mhm.
because people aren't playing casual games so much on the PS5, I'm guessing, but it does really cut
Well,
themselves
yeah.
short.
Well, the flummoxing part of this is that if you are playing a AAA title, especially if it's like a Twitch kind of game, and
Mm.
you need those fast response times and low latency and stuff like that,
Yeah.
this isn't it, buddy. Like this
Yeah.
isn't,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
this is actually would be better. Like if you're going to stream from your PS5, it would be better for more casual games,
Yeah.
because the instant response isn't quite as important. So it's so strange and unfortunate. Maybe PlayStation just looked at or Sony just looked at the numbers and figured, you know what, we can crank this thing out at a 20% of the engineering costs and effort, and have it as like an accessory to the PS5. And the handheld market is getting saturated. It's only of a limited size. Not only are you competing with the Steam Decks and the Nintendo Switches of the world, but all the retro devices that are out, like the Analog Pocket, and the things like the Playdate. But then, of course, all the smartphones and tablets out there that people are
Yeah.
using for casual gaming. So maybe they just figured, let's take a lower risk approach. And then when it totally fails, they go, why do we even bother in the first place? And maybe next
So
generation, they won't even bother with any kind of
yeah,
handheld,
and the
which would be
lesson to
unfortunate.
learn is
Yeah.
not to do it, and that's the frustrating
Yeah.
thing. I think the other thing too, I I probably shouldn't go into it, but there's a device that came out that's a music device, not the one that we might talk about later, but
Mm-hmm.
another one, and it's like a device that was designed by people looking at a spreadsheet. It's like, oh, well, that feature is expensive. Oh, okay. Well, that's like the main reason people would buy it. But okay, what is your use case if you're going to take that feature out? So,
Hmm.
yeah, it's kind of like it's head scratching to people who actually buy these devices that they would remove features like that. This one is a little bit different. I think this is really wholeheartedly designed around that. Like it's not just like at the last minute they're like, don't put that in, it's too expensive. Like this was designed from the ground up to be what
Mm-hmm.
it is. So I mean,
And at least it's only $200 US. Like
yeah,
that's so
yeah,
just
yeah. So you get what
so
you pay for.
yeah. So the take home message for anyone that happens to be paying attention is that if you're planning on getting this for yourself or as a gift for someone else, got to have a PS5. So just so we're clear, 3/4 of the Momentous crew have PS5s. That's Gray, Will, and me. So we're okay to receive that. We will not complain. We would definitely be happy to do a hands-on review. Just saying.
Yeah.
Just saying. Even if it's for casual gaming.
I'm going to Stan Lee this one. Enough said.
Yeah. Could you play Starfield on it though? Like, do you think that? Because that's PS5, right?
No, that's Microsoft.
Oh, my bad.
That's one of the. Oh, you're starting a whole thing here. There's a lot of Starfield haters out there, and one of the things is that it gets down to some people it's PlayStation versus Microsoft. Not everyone, but some people it's Xbox versus. I have no time for those people. I actually had a discussion with someone today, and he had some genuine criticism that I could totally hear and understood. And I don't play video games for the story, so I was like, yep. That's not me, man. I just want to shoot things and build spaceships.
Yeah.
So,
all right. Well, in case if we haven't lost everyone yet, talking about the quote unquote brief follow up on the PlayStation Portal, let's move on to some other cool new gadgets. And the funny thing is you and I both had identified this. You put it you put it in the rundown before I did, but I had emailed myself about this. So this is the first of three that we'll talk about of new devices from Teenage Engineering, and it's known as this one is known as the EP133KO2. What is this fascinating looking device? Well,
so first of all, let's just start with the naming. The naming's all messed up. There is a KO1, and has nothing to do with the KO1. It's basically the KO1 is. Do you remember those pocket operators, the POs?
Mm-hmm.
This is not a pocket operator. This is a pocket operator on steroids. So I think they just wanted to use the name KO, and that was part of it.
Oh yeah, that's a little. So the KO1 is I think we've talked about that in the past.
Yeah. It's a sampler. So this
it's like version, a little teeny. It looks like a calculator.
Yeah. So they have ones that just make sounds. This one, I believe, is a sampler. Is this the one with the sampler? There's one that has a sampler.
Yeah, it's got a microphone for sampling. And
it's got so this is not the thing that you were just on the other screen.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
again, it looks like a calculator, but it looks like a proper one for like accountants.
Yeah,
and I love the aesthetic, and the screen.
The aesthetic is amazing.
Yeah.
I think the big complaint here is the memory. Was it 64
megabytes,
which is not a ton to store on board things. It does have a ton of sounds, and I will say that a lot of times sounds can be very light. It's obviously not analog; it's digital, so they're recorded samples basically that is triggering. You can add your own. I believe there's a USB-C connection.
And you can there's 999 slots for different samples.
Yeah.
And a microphone to record your own. Cool.
Yeah. I mean, one of the complaints is that you couldn't, put 1,000 songs on it or something. It's just, I know.
They got close.
So, yeah. So yeah. I mean, I think that it looks amazing. I think the functionality is really cool. I've seen some demos of it. I'm very much interested. I hope my wife isn't listening at the moment. I'm totally keen on this.
Maybe you hope she is.
Hint, yeah. Ooh, hint. One of the complaints often in the sort of music DJ community about Teenage Engineering devices is they are very, very aesthetically pleasing, very interesting, but not necessarily the most technology for your buck, because there's so much sort of cool kitschy factor in it. It's so a lot of people
you're paying for the design, the industrial.
You're paying for the design,
the
you're paying for the aesthetic, and all that kind of stuff, and the marketing.
They have so much swag too, like just
swag. Like it comes out with it,
t-shirts
and hats and like all these things, and it comes with a bag that's designed to the hilt.
Hundreds and hundreds of dollars if you want the whole kit. The shorts, the hoodie.
Yeah. So this is the complaint about these devices is that you could spend the same amount of money and get more technology, but it wouldn't look as cool.
Yeah.
For me, I think it looks pretty darn cool. I actually like the functionality. I could see some use
Mhm.
case for this.
Mhm.
So yeah,
$299 US, so pushing like what
yeah.
between 4 and 450
I
Canadian.
mean,
Like
with
that's
taxes and everything,
yeah,
you're
yeah,
looking at close to five hundred
yeah.
dollars Canadian with it, the case and all that kind
Yeah.
of stuff.
So do you
So
think this is really, I mean, this is for the enthusiasts, right? Like this isn't really like a professional recording device, even though
no,
Teenage
no,
Engineering is like hoping that people might make entire songs on it. One of the
yeah,
things I read is that it may be one of the reasons they designed it with the bright orange buttons and whatnot, make things easy to find when you're DJing. So this could be like for
yeah,
performance and for triggering little loops
yeah.
and samples and whatnot while you're DJing. Do you see it having more of a use case in that department?
Yeah, I mean, I see this as maybe just one piece to a
Mhm.
larger kit bag.
Yeah.
I don't see it as something like a machine or MPC or
Mhm.
something like that,
What do you mean
which
by
is
those? Just for those playing at home.
they're like bigger samplers. This is a
Mhm.
sampler where it
Yeah.
takes sounds and will sequence it.
Mhm.
And MPC is sort of a big station.
Right.
And like I don't know if you can grab one on the screen, just or like the machine, the Native Instruments machine. There's different versions of it, but or the
And
MPC it's
is that a Teenage Engineering one as well?
no, it's another
Oh,
product.
oh, I see. Yeah, well, we'll pass.
Yeah, okay.
But this is a darn sight. This is a darn sight cheaper than their. They have a $1,400 synthesizer, the
Yeah,
OP1,
yeah.
right? So this is,
And I was never
and
very
it's tiny
impressed with
too.
that
Yeah,
thing.
we talked
I
about
was
that
ne
on the show as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was never very impressed with that.
Mhm.
I've seen
Well,
it
for
a
the
couple
price,
times.
especially.
For that price, you
Yeah.
can buy way more synthesizer than that.
Hmm.
I like, I'm a guy who doesn't need much of a reason to buy a piece of music technology, and this is this
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
like hard
Yeah.
pass.
Gotcha.
So, but again, that device, the OP1, people certain people love it because it's small, because you can kind of configure the buttons, you can change those colored knobs to be like cranks and stuff, and like, what is it about hipsters and cranks? Like, oh, you're on mute. I think you're on mute. I can't hear you.
I was on mute because I was clearing my throat or coughing or
Okay.
something. This is hacking up along. So it seems like the aesthetic they go for with a lot of their products is really anywhere from like late 60s through to early
Yeah.
80s, and it's a very cool aesthetic. Now, this, speaking of having a whole kit,
Yeah.
also in the last in the week or two, the Teenage Engineering introduced a couple of other devices, a new mic and a new recorder, and they're
Yeah.
getting some good reviews again. But like, if to get, so there's the CM15 quote unquote digital tape recorder, and no, that's the microphone, and then the digital quote unquote digital tape recorder is the TP7. But together they're almost $3,000
Yeah.
US.
Yeah.
But you look at them and like they're just totally lustworthy kind of products, right? They have almost like a Dieter Rams of Braun aesthetic to them. The the recorder has a spinning thing. It's almost like a mini turntable in there. So if you can put your finger on it to stop recording or playback. Like it's just over engineered at the
Yeah.
wazoo. But like it's just lustworthy for people who've got the disposable income. Like, believe it or not, even in this economy, there are some people who just are almost gadget fetishists, and they'll want
Yeah.
this stuff no matter how much they actually use it. And I think a lot of us are guilty of that to a certain extent. We get something
Sure.
and then barely use it. But like for $3,000 for these two things together, and you got an orange leather backing in this one, very Skookum Industrial design, a full 1/4 inch plug socket with an adapter for 3.5 mil. So it's got some interesting aspects and specs to it. And apparently the microphone is the standalone microphone. The other device is that's the CM15. Apparently it's quite high quality as well. So I mean, these things are pretty compact. The CM15 microphone has got mini XLR, USB-C, or 3.5 mil jacks for plugging into a mixing board or portable recorder. So that's the angle they seem to be going at with some of these devices, because they're all so compact, you could have a pretty portable kit. You could load everything up. Of course, you probably want like some sort of custom case or something to put everything in nicely, and maybe they'll get in that business too if they're not already. But so these are different because they're not quite as, I mean they are digital in a sense, but they're different sort of devices, more slightly mechanical. Did you find these tempting at all, Will?
These
Even as
ones
objects?
personally are not very tempting to me, but I'm not looking for things like this. I think these two are, to me, I'm a little biased because I don't mind the last product, but these two to me are quintessential the complaint about teenage engineering. whereas it's like over-engineered, very sort of aesthetically pleasing, and
almost a bit precious though. Like,
a little precious.
The Ferrari of tape recorders, is people are referring to the TP7 as.
And it's like, look, you can record stuff for a lot cheaper than this at a high quality. So I mean, like you said, $3,000 for both. I mean, a Shure 57, a microphone, which is fairly decent. I don't know how it stacks up to this, is like $100. And now it looks like,
but that doesn't record on itself, to be fair, right? You would but you could plug it into your iPhone if you really wanted
exactly. So I mean, there's solutions that are way cheaper than this that can record high quality audio, but like you say, part of it is the aesthetic nature of it, and there is a big market for electronics that look aesthetically pleasing, that people almost just use as like sculptures in their house or something like that.
And again, this is something that you could imagine being like from the late 60s or something. Like it's got like this, that Dieter Rams Braun look, a little bit of Sony, a little bit of Bang & Olufsen. So as objects, cool. But how many of the people that actually buy them are going to use them on a regular basis? But we got to keep that consumer economy going somehow, right?
Yep.
Speaking of which, some news, a bit of news from October that we never got a chance to talk about. And so talking about things that are kind of retro. Now we're talking about things that are actually vintage. And they're back in October, Urban Outfitters was selling vintage iPods for hundreds of dollars. So I guess this is all part of like, the 20-year cycle when people, each generation, they look back and they miss the things that they had 20 years ago. So they were selling iPod minis. So not even the iPod Nano. It was like the iPod minis for like $200 US. They were refurbished. And and that the mini, that came out in like 2002, 2003-ish, I believe. And that was a big deal because they were using the continued to use the tiny Toshiba hard drives, spinning hard drives, and then they were replaced like a year later by the iPod Nano, which really surprised people. And the iPod Nanos were even smaller, but those used flash memory. But there's something aesthetically pleasing about the iPod Mini with its rounded corners. It fit really nicely in the hand. It came in a variety of colors, light pastel colors of blue and green and pink and others. My wife Stephanie had one. She had a green one. So they were really nice. Again, objects, but they were also functional, and you could get a number of songs. Not as many songs as in like the full iPods at the time, but every generation's got its nostalgia. We've talked about our like for our old video game systems and stuff like that. And
it's just sad that this is nostalgia now. I mean, I feel like we were
just
talking
means we're
about
old.
this 5 minutes. Yeah. The other thing I'll say is, so my brother-in-law bought one of these, and like 3 months later, they replaced it with the Nano. The other thing about it is, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, this is just my memory, it was like their best-selling product, or one of their best-selling products.
And that was what blew people's minds about it. They
And
just killed it for the Nano, and the Nano did even better because like they knew what the Nano represented, and it was like way thinner and lighter. And I mean, the capacity wasn't quite as big, but it was like basically like a couple of sticks of gum.
But it was bold at the time. I mean, people didn't know that the Nano was going to outsell it, right?
Who kills their best-selling product? And
you're
rolling the dice, and that's good old Steve Jobs era Apple. All right, so there's another vintage product, another class of vintage products that's been making having a bit of a revival lately, again from the early 2000s. So this is Gen Z driving this. Apparently, point and shoot cameras are a thing again. Oh, John, I forgot. I got a handful of them in my office
Yeah,
downstairs.
I got
Various
like 3 in my bedroom
yeah,
somewhere.
so you think of Sony had their CyberShot series. I had the Canon. I can't remember what the Canon ones were called. They had some popular line of point and shoots, and I had a Pentax one that actually fit in an Altoids tin, which was super cool. And the cameras on, I had a couple of different Panasonic models as well, which had really nice zoom lenses on them. But yeah, there's been a bit of a revival, and even my niece, who is I think 16, is 15, 16 years old. She's like, I totally want one. And it's on her Christmas list, like a point and shoot camera, if you can believe it. And then it's got the nostalgic photo style. I guess people talk about the immediacy. Well, I guess that was what digital gave us, and just having something that is not competing with every other app on one's phone. For years, and if not decades, the whole trend was convergence. We were looking for the device that could replace our iPod, our camera, our PDA, our phone, and that's what the iPhone represented, and subsequent smartphones. But now, for whatever reason, be it aesthetic or nostalgic, or from a let's disconnect a little bit perspective, now we're seeing that things blow out into separate devices again, as we've seen with the advent of the resurgence of portable gaming handhelds like the Playdate and whatnot. So, they'll get us one way or another. Well, it's like they'll get the new thing that's all converged, and then the other new things that are all separate again. We just have to, I guess we just have to keep the economy going. That's really what it is. So bye.
Yeah. Bye.
So to you, Will, I asked, what vintage gadget would you fork out some bucks for here in 2023? If there's something either that maybe you had in the past and let go due to decluttering or due to breaking down, or something that you never had and always longed for, what would you be willing to shell out a couple $100 for to have, whether it's to use or just have it occupy space on your shelf of tchotchkes?
Vestax QFO, Vestax 07 ISP Pro.
I should have known.
That's why I was winking. I was
okay. Okay, so let me pull this up. Which I'm sure we've talked about this before.
Vestax
QFO, and that's the grand. What era is this from?
2000s. They go for more than they sold for at the time.
Lord, $2,500 Canadian.
Yeah, I mean they sold for like 1,600 at the time.
Oh yeah,
and
it's got that nasty or like early mid 2000s like aesthetic as well.
Yeah,
too.
The plastic. I mean, and they don't wear well. They often break, and the face plates wear out.
Right.
But anyways, so that's probably tops on my list. That's actually low. There's ones that I don't know. I don't think they're selling, but there's ones that have been posted on eBay that are for like $8,000 and $6,000 and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, that's tops on my list. I have to say, if you're talking about other electronic gadgets, I mean, we talk about Atari 2600. I wouldn't mind an Atari 2600. We may have one somewhere in my parents' house that I'll find when, the unfortunate day that I have to clear out their basement.
Why wait? Let's go now.
Let's go right now. Yeah. I think that's the thing that pops to mind. The other device, again, you can see what is on my brain, is a Roland 808, nice. The original Roland 808. So if there was an original Roland, again, those are things that go for, I don't know. How much do those things go for? Like $10,000? I don't know what they go
for.
Really? Oh, they go for a lot. I could be wrong. Maybe I make it expensive. They're not cheap. Look it up. Look it up on Reverb. How much is one on Reverb?
You got two broken hands.
Okay.
I'm driving this thing. TR 808. I remember. Yeah, you could get those in thrift shops for.
Oh yeah, I mean, they were like $100. That's what drove house music, right? Oh, dude, there's one for $9,000.
Oh my goodness.
$11,000, $8,000.
Even though like all of this can be recreated in software so easily nowadays. Yes. Again, it's just part of it's just to have it.
And I have a TR8S, which is the modern version of this. but it's not analog. I mean, the big thing for people that would want that is that it's analog. It's actual diodes, and there's the warm sound, man. You can really hear the warm sound. Yeah, but that would be the thing for me. How about you?
Nice. Well, I've got one of my choices up here. I've had a number of turntables over the years, mostly just crappy cheap ones that I've found at used shops. But I always longed for a Technics SL 1200 Mark II. Just, I mean, the classic DJ turntables. They got to use them a bit back in my DJing days in the early '90s, I suppose. But always longed for a pair of those. And they've Panasonic, Technics. Same parent company as Panasonic. They have resurrected the SL 1200. I think they're up to the Mark 7 now.
Yeah.
And lots of great features. But something about the Mark IIs, having a pair of those in the black might be nice. Of course, just the strong direct drive motor and the nice big start stop button. The very
classic.
The nice slow moving pitch control on there, very precise. So yeah, there's something about that. So that was something I just thought about when you were talking about all this music stuff. But my pick initially was going to be, and I think again probably talked about this before, was the Commodore SX64. Again, these aren't really handheld gadgets, but I have a Commodore 64 that I've had since the early '80s, which I love. But the SX64 was the executive 64, which was a luggable version with a little screen. What is that? 3.5-inch screen or something like that, and it was just like basically being able to take your Commodore 64 with you, and it had a built-in floppy disk drive, and why not? But again, it's one of these things like, would I even use it? I barely use my Commodore 64 that I've got right over here, just beside me, because time. But this was sort of the era of the K Pros and the Osbornes. Like I think your dad had the Osborne one that we had on set back on our TV show days. So so the Commodore SX64 and the Technics SL 1200 Mark II would probably be my two. We'll have to think about some handheld devices at some point, because that's what seems to be popular now in this resurgence, is the point and shoot cameras, the handhelds there, and the iPods, of course. But we come from a time where everything was much larger.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on to some other unrelated, although kind of again the similar era. I just saw a story just today, actually, on the Microsoft Xbox store. They've got all sorts of great products, a lot of merch, a lot of wearable stuff, sweaters and t-shirts and hoodies and all that kind of stuff. But one of the latest, the ugly sweater for 2023 is Windows XP's iconic default wallpaper.
Yeah,
and
I love
got that, and it's called Bliss. So it's got that scene with the field and the puffy clouds in the skies, the fluffy clouds in the skies, and I was never really much of a Windows user myself, but this is amazing. And it's even got the cursor icon on there, and it says there's a little I guess it's on the tag, an ode to bliss. Oh bliss, how many eyes have gazed upon your verdant hills and marveled at your azure sky and cotton clouds so still. So we're into the Windows XP side of things nowadays, where a few years ago, when vaporwave music was a thing, and it was sampling chimes and tones from, say, like Windows 95 and Windows 98. So we're just moving along through the various iterations of Windows for some retro chic. But
I do love that. I do think error box in the middle of it, but I guess that's not the point.
The whole thing could just be blue.
Yeah.
Blue screen of death. All right, let's move into some entertainment news.
Yes.
This one's a little bit of follow-up, and it's just more this one is just more of a mention. We've talked about Rebel Moon, which is the new upcoming project from director Zack Snyder, and this is going to be on Netflix. And from the trailers that we've seen so far, it looks pretty cool. It's apparently it started off life as a spec script for a Star Wars. Like there was talk at one point that Zack Snyder was maybe going to direct some Star Wars stuff, and that didn't really end up happening. So, as we've discussed previously, this feels very Star Wars-y, but I'm sure things have been tweaked up a little bit to keep enough distance there. But there's a great in-depth interview in the current issue of Wired magazine, the December issue, and of course it's on their website as well, where he talks about his experience over the last few years. They talk about Justice League and the Snyder cut. Because he had to step away during the original cut of Justice League because he had a personal tragedy. And apparently he's got quite the taxidermy collection as well in his office. But interesting, kind of thoughtful guy, kind of controversial. He's opinionated in his filmmaking, and not everyone digs the choices he makes. And then the interview also goes into a little bit about fandom or standom, as the case may be, and the toxic online culture by people who are a little too ardent supporters and can bully anyone who doesn't buy into the Snyderverse vision, etc. So it's just, if you're interested in some of his past work, be it Watchmen or Sucker Punch, or he did a few of the DC movies like Man of Steel, and of course Justice League. So there's some mixed results in there, but I think definitely 300 of course was the one where he first got on my radar. So I've got time for him, but like everyone is saying, his output isn't perfect.
I mentioned Dawn of the Dead a few weeks back.
Oh yeah. And Army of the Dead and the other spin-off there. So he's been doing a lot of stuff on Netflix. And one of the things the article gets into is the difference between producing for a theatrical release and something that's purely going to be on streaming. And I think what he indicated, if I recall from having read the article earlier today, is that I think he said that with streaming, you've got to hook people pretty quickly, because you're just, hey, kitty, ninja, making a guess.
Sorry, I just put my cat in front of the camera for those listening at home.
So, so like, because with streaming, you're just like one click away from something else. So if you don't get people's attention, they're off to the next thing. Whereas in a theater, people are pretty committed. Like it's got to be something pretty terrible for people to walk out of the theater, right? So you can have a bit more patient filmmaking. So he just explores that tension a little bit, because nowadays we're seeing some movies being released simultaneously on streaming and theatrical, and sometimes it does okay, and sometimes not so great. Again, a lot of us here, we like to see stuff in the theaters, and streaming is nice for a second or third watch, right, to get some of those additional details. So that's in Wired magazine. With an interview with Zack Snyder. Another thing I wanted to point people towards is something else we talked about recently. Vanity Fair has a real deep dive, first look into the upcoming Fallout epic TV series from the creator of Westworld, Jonathan Nolan. So that's Christopher Nolan's brother, who also was involved with Person of Interest and some other stuff. So this is quite an in-depth look at Fallout and
Brotherhood of Steel.
So from trailers that you've seen,
Brotherhood of Steel,
right? So the big mech suit. So is that a robot, or is that someone in a suit?
No,
like I've never played Fallout.
Oh,
gotcha. That's pretty big. Yeah. So from the trailers you've seen so far, from what you've read, such as with this Vanity Fair, we've got they've taken some artistic liberties. Apparently the ghouls are characters, but they've got like kind of the one guy they're calling the Ghoul, who's not quite as ghoulish, but still a little bit. He looks a little bit like Red Skull from the Marvel universe, but he's a bit more sentient, it seems. So they've
some of them can talk.
Yeah,
there are occasions where some,
because they're kind of like post-apocalyptic zombies, right? Like
people
who lived on the surface as opposed to living underground for 200 years.
Yeah. And so there's a variety of ghouls that you'll run into, that some are more sentient than others, but some of them are totally feral.
Right.
It's not like The Walking Dead where they're the primary enemy, they're a foe. There's lots of other foes, but they're just they're one of the landscape. They're part of the ecosystem. But it seems like maybe they're making this Walter Goggins, the Ghoul, sort of the main baddie. That's my assumption, but I could be wrong.
Are you okay? So from the trailers you've seen so far and the sneak peeks and the what you've read, how optimistic are you about this? Because again, it's always tricky when you're tackling a beloved franchise, in this case, a gaming franchise. So there's,
Yeah.
there's the IP there. And we've seen like, most people seem to be pretty happy with how HBO treated The Last of Us, and so I think we're going to start to see a lot more video game based movies and TV shows now that they seem to have gotten some decent directors and producers in the mix here. And so there's a lot of ripe intellectual property for mining and converting for, not only for the gamer fans, but for those who aren't real gamers and are still interested in these the stories that being told from these franchises. So any ongoing thoughts? You how optimistic or pessimistic are you?
There's a couple things. First of all, Fallout, while there are stories, we go like in Fallout 1 and 2 different than 3, but let's just say 3 and 4 and Fallout New Vegas and Fallout 76 are kind of all feel similar, but we all see them. They're all different stories, right? We follow different people. We're in Las Vegas in New Vegas. We're in Washington, D.C. in Fallout 3, I believe. We're in, Massachusetts in Fallout 4. So we're in different places. It's not like there's one main character that we always follow. So I think my point here is that there's opportunity to tell different stories. You could be somewhere else and experience something else. So it's not like you're stuck in one spot. And with 3 or 4 main characters, like you can make up new characters as till the cows come home. There are more concepts. Like I said, like the Brotherhood of Steel is a group. It's not necessarily dependent on one person, right? Like you could have more Brotherhood of Steel members appear somewhere. It's just something you could do. Or the New California Republic, you could have that group show up, probably in California, but you could have
Wyoming. How do we get here?
Yeah, exactly. So I have a lot of hope seeing trailers and seeing these shots. They have totally nailed the look. I mean, that armor looks straight from the game. Like it's pretty spot on. It's spooky. So
which game are do they seem to be pulling from for this
series? That looks like Fallout 4, but I think that armor's in Fallout 3 as well. But that hover ship they show couple pictures back, that one, I forget what that's called, but that's the Brotherhood of Steel's base, and I think that's only in 4. I could be wrong. Now, I haven't played Fallout 76. It
had mixed reviews from what I
and it had mixed reviews. So I played a lot of Fallout 3, a lot of New Vegas, and a ton of Fallout 4. So I'm fairly familiar, let me say, with the Fallout franchise. And I think that's from Fallout 4.
Alrighty.
Someone can correct me online, but I most remember that from Fallout 4. Fallout 3, it's like, what are we going on? Like 16, 17 points. So it's if it was in Fallout 3, I don't remember it. It was
but these all kind of take place like what, 200 some odd years after like a nuclear holocaust.
Yeah, I can't remember the exact
war,
time, but basically.
And people have been living underground this whole time, and then you've got the surface dwellers who are all messed up.
And we're kind of stuck in like a pseudo 50s because everything kind of happened in the 50s, and then
I gotcha.
So that's why you see a lot of like the branding and posters seem very 50s, and like you'll see some of the
hey, what's that guy called? The thumbs up guy, the iconic.
Oh, he's just the Pip-Boy, the Fallout boy.
Pip-Boy,
Pip-Boy, yeah. Because he's on your device, which is called it's just called is it called Pip-Boy? Oh man, it's been a while since I played the game. I'm so in Fallout right now.
Yeah. So moving from video game inspired TV series to a new Alien movie, and there's a few more details have leaked out. This kind of caught me off guard because we know that they're working on an Alien TV series at the moment, but there's this in 2024, Alien Romulus is supposed to come out, directed by Fede Alvarez, who I'm not familiar. I'm just going to look up real quick.
I had not heard any of this till I saw this. Is this like a real Alien movie, like the one that
Oh,
came out 10 years
yeah,
ago,
yeah,
or is this
yeah.
one of
So
these?
Fede Alvarez directed Don't Breathe, one of the Evil Dead movies, The Girl in the Spider's Web. Uh, it seems, or he was involved with them anyway. Was it writer or director? IMDb is so. Yeah, he directed Girl in the Spider's Web, Don't Breathe, From Dusk Till Dawn, the series, The New Evil Dead, and a few others. So interesting. He's definitely got the horror movie Bonafides there. But where this takes place in the timeline is between the first two Alien movies. So Alien and Aliens.
Oh, really?
And so it's because there's quite a lot of time in between. I think is it 37 or 57 years? Because Ripley was on ice for a while, right?
Yeah.
57 years, right? So this happens, and this movie sounds like it doesn't involve Ripley per se, but they for what they've done for this movie, which is sort of a sequel, sort of a prequel. I don't know what you call it when a new movie shows up in the middle of the timeline. We got to
A
come up with a word for
mistake?
that. Yeah. But I mean, there's a lot of history in there and to explore. But what they've done is gone back and recruited the creature designers and technicians from the second Alien movie, so Aliens, which was the James Cameron one, because that was the one with a lot of aliens in it,
Yeah.
and there was we got a whole expert team. We're talking, what was it, 1986? So that's 37 years ago, and a lot of those folks are still alive, I guess, and are available to do the practical effects work, which is actually a really great sign, because that tells me that they're going to rely less on CG, which would be nice. And that's kind of been a weak spot with something like Alien Covenant, for example, was a fair bit of CG in there. And it's like, so I'm optimistic. How deep into the Alien movies have you been over the years? Well,
I mean, I like them. I remember seeing 3 in the theater.
Ooh,
I
the David Fincher
enjoyed
one, the
3.
controversial one.
The David,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I actually kind of liked it, but it
Me
was
too.
really weird.
Yep. Quite different.
I like 1
That's
Alien,
classic.
but I saw that way after because
And it's got
I
a
was
cat
too
in it.
young. Yeah, it's got a
Yeah.
cat in it. Alien
1979. You were pretty young.
Yeah. Aliens 3 was right in my wheelhouse, and that was the movie that I still really like that movie. To me, that's my favorite of the
Interesting.
movies.
Bold
But
choice.
I know a lot of people like 1. I saw Aliens first, so yeah, to me that's my favorite. It's also very 80s.
Sorry, which one? Aliens or Alien 3?
Aliens,
Okay.
with an S. That's my favorite movie. I like Alien second.
Yeah.
I saw it out of order.
Yeah.
And to me, again, I saw it a year or 2 after it came out in theaters, Aliens, and it's very 80s. It felt very action movie-ish, even more than the first one, with Space Marines and the mech suit and all that kind of stuff. Spoiler alert.
Game over, man.
Game over, man. Game over. So to me, that was just like one.
It's a different genre movie. It's like a military action movie, whereas the first one is like a survival horror movie. And so that's the neat thing about the Alien movies, that each of them has been kind of different.
Yeah.
And then Alien Resurrection got largely panned, but there's some interesting concepts that they explore in there with that of motherhood and whatnot, and they got the alien hybrid. And then of course there's the prequels. Yeah, and then there's Prometheus and Alien
better
Covenant.
Sorry, I kind of like 3 better than the Resurrection and Covenant.
Yeah, I mean that's So I really like Prometheus. Alien Covenant somewhat less so, although it does have Fassbender, and we're here for Fassbender. And then of course there's the Alien versus Predator. The first one was kind of interesting mythology wise, and then AVP Requiem was just like an exercise in turning people into jam. It was just ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, I never even watched it, to be honest.
But
so,
did you see the first Alien versus Predator?
No, I haven't seen either of them. That to me, where it was just like a horror movie, pretty much. So I wasn't really into it myself.
There's more to it than that. It's kind of interesting. It goes into a bit of history between the species, Anyhow, yeah. So Alien coming out, Alien Romulus coming
Yeah.
out sometime in 2024. Oh, scheduled for release August 16th. Not a great date. That's kind of because late August is often a dumping ground for movies.
Yeah,
So,
it's true. It's true.
hopefully it's better than the date suggests. So moving on, let's get to our momentous picks. Starting with you, Will.
Yes. So my pick is we went and saw this just this weekend, Tristan and Gray and I. It's called The Storyville Mosquito by Kid Koala. It's basically a live filming of a movie. It's called Theater Cinema. And they've got real sets for puppets. They're doing live puppeteering with switching. So they have a live editor, they have a live orchestra or a trio. It's not orchestra, a trio, string trio.
Yeah.
Kid Koala is using various instruments, including a turntable, a synth, bass guitars, and things like that. And cinematographer, it's a lot of moving pieces, and they're basically telling a story of this mosquito and his journey in a fictional world. And it is both amazing to witness and really touching. But the other thing I'll say is it's very entertaining, not beyond what's going on. If you just watched it and not everything, I still think it's very entertaining. It's very funny. It's got a lot of heart. It's got a lot of personality.
Very sweet, yeah.
And the music is good.
Yeah.
It's the other thing is that I think the music is great. So it really stands up. It's really an achievement in terms of storytelling and technology. And it's great. And there's a real sort of the live aspect adds so much to it. You feel like you're part of it. You feel like you're there. You feel like it's really happening. And it's just so well thought out in terms of things like, a character will write something and then that thing will appear on the wall. And you saw the wall previously and that wasn't there. So somebody put it up in the meantime.
A
It's
team of puppeteers and set people
just
doing stuff.
Yeah. All the things going on is just crazy. And they have different sets. They have, wide shots where you see a whole street scene. They have close-ups where you see like big bugs that are like, practically human size.
Yeah.
And so, but then there's ones that are tiny, that are only a few inches tall. Yeah. So it's just amazing. I mean, I've kind of gone on and on about it. I mean, I sort of know what you think, but we didn't talk too much about it because we were saving it for the show. But what are your thoughts on it?
Well, it was funny because when you, Gray, and I were exiting the theater, we all commented how I think each of us got a bit misty. There was some times, there's one part where tears literally running down my face because there was just something about it. It was so touching, as you mentioned. It was really sweet. And I had no idea really what to expect when you had suggested it a week or two ago. I thought, we saw Kid Koala together a few years ago for a musical performance, but there was a lot of puppetry involved there, like the octopus DJ and stuff, and that was pretty cool. And I think over the last few years, we've been inviting each other to things and just kind of like say, yeah, let's do it. Like, even if we don't really know much about it, if it's whether it's going to see, some band or some DJ or whatever. And that's been really fun. Me being able to share things with you and vice versa. And then Gray coming along when he's been available as well. And that's how you get surprised and delighted, and you get to experience things. And it's fun to go with friends too, because, maybe you wouldn't have gone on your own. Like I don't like going stuff on my own necessarily. So it's fun to go with friends, momentous or otherwise. And
Absolutely.
it was fun to watch the puppeteers racing around, from one set to another to make it all happen. Like you said, in real time. It was family friendly. There was lots of people brought their kids, and you could hear them yelping out once in a while too.
Yeah.
And I think you can like book them to do shows, come to your town, whatever. I'm sure that's not cheap. But they're going to be heading to Montreal, which is Kid Koala's where he lives right now. They're heading to New York as well. So if anyone out there, I would highly encourage you, especially
Edmonton. as
Yeah,
well, I think.
Edmonton. Yeah. So if you have any kind of like a beating heart in your chest, and you're not dead inside, like so many of us are on the cusp of, this is really worth checking out, especially if you've got, some younger ones in your family that could share this. I wish I had known how family friendly it was. I would have brought my nephew. So if it comes back again, I would love to bring one or more family members to enjoy this. It was a really sweet and innovative and artistic and creative production. So
Yeah.
thank you, Will, for inviting
Oh,
me to
well,
that.
thank you for coming. I've been eyeing this for a while, and there was a previous show that he did that was similar to this.
Mhm.
We saw his sort of bigger, I think he called it like
Yeah.
vaudeville puppet theaters. I
Yeah.
forget what the name was. We saw that show, but there was another show a lot like this called Newphonia Must Fall.
Oh, okay.
And so he did one previously like this. I think in many ways that was the proto version of this. So I was just happy to see this performance, and it was so amazing to go with you guys, and it really was special to share it with friends. And I know you're very open to this, but I'll say if you don't like turntable music, if you don't like DJ music, I don't think it's that big of an issue. It's basically they're mostly playing jazz. To be quite honest, it's like there's a string trio and they're largely playing do 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 do. Like that's most of the music you'll hear through it is just like a stand-up bass, basically plucking a good portion of the time,
and a violin and a viola, I think too. It checked a lot of boxes for me. So good pick. If it wasn't yours, it would have been mine.
Oh, thank you.
My pick's a little different, harkening back to our retro theme. There's a website, a blog called cable.com, CABEL.com. And it's a blog by Cable Sasser, who's the founder or co-founder of Panic Software. They've produced all sorts of great software over the years, mostly for the Mac. My FTP client of choice, Transmit, was designed by them. They had a great early MP3 player for the Mac called Audion. And it almost became the source for iTunes, but then SoundJam MP won that, and Apple bought that and built iTunes on top of it. But so this guy's got a lot of tech cred from over the years. They've made they've collaborated with others on making some games, including Firewatch. They were involved in the production of The Playdate in conjunction with Teenage Engineering, we just spoke about earlier. So this guy is a bit of a legend in the tech scene, especially the Mac adjacent tech scene. And on his blog, he did this thing, just like little side project thing that he's been working on for over 10 years. And in this blog post, he talks all about this gadget catalog called the DAC catalog, DAK. And it's quite the read. And one of the best things about this blog post is all the images he scanned from this electronics catalog from the 80s. And you look at some of the devices that they featured in this catalog with a lot of long copy. So the storytelling aspect of it, we got everything from Darth Vader phones to brain games to little quasi robot things to mini keyboards to whole computer systems to fancy telephones. And they went on for decades and a few decades. But it's a real trip down, if not memory lane, because you might not be familiar with all these gadgets, but a trip down like sort of an alternate timeline that you might have followed if you had been in the world of this DAC Industries gadget catalog. So I definitely recommend checking it out and reading. It's some great copy, the storytelling in there too. And of course, lots of great scans from this catalog over the years. And some of these things like, oh man, this little system that's got a built-in TV and tape deck and all sorts of cool stuff. Like, like Pac-Man telephone and it's just so many things. So we'll have a link for that in the show notes as well. So not quite as sweet as your cool mosquito performance. But it definitely ties into some of the retro stuff and vintage stuff that we were talking about gadget wise earlier on. All right, we're almost there, Will. Let's just talk about our momentous projects and then we'll wrap this up. You got
Yeah.
some new beats for us, another team up.
Yeah. Yeah. So it just launched today on tableless.net. I think it's coming out on Table Beats soon, on the app, on Table Beats app. It's called Team Up 3, and it's myself and one of my favorite beat makers. I think his name is Little Bach, Lilbac.
Who just happens to
He's
look a bit like Wolverine.
yeah, yeah. So he tends to use wolf imagery. So
Perfect.
I kind of did that. Um, I really love a bunch of these beats. I mean, obviously I'm biased, but there's just some fun explorations into some more electronic, but also very hip hoppy beats on this as well. So I really encourage you to check it out. One of my favorite loopers that I've done this year, and it's just so thrilled to work with Lil Bach, and I hope you enjoy it.
Very cool. You can find that at www.tableless.net/artist/Molotov or tablebeats.com. And one of our missing quarters this week, Tasia Custodi, has faithfully produced yet another YouTube video for us. And this week it is new Google Maps updates just in time for holiday travel. So she digs into a bunch of new features in Google Maps. If you happen to be using Google Maps, new colors, better transit options, emoji reactions, and gas prices. Oh, say goodbye to gas, buddy. So Tasia, of course, real expert in the whole Google ecosystem, and Google Maps is no exception. And speaking of Tasia, she and I have another episode of our little side podcast, AI named this show, and the latest episode, which came out on Friday, was AI chatbots and boardroom coups. So in the last episode of Momentous Live, we did a bit of a recap on the whole drama at OpenAI with Sam Altman being ousted. And since that episode, there was more updates, and then he's back. So we do a deep dive into some of the nitty gritty details of that whole drama that unfolded last week, and along with some belated news on the OpenAI Dev Day and xAI's Grok, and some updates to Anthropic's Claude large language model chatbot as well. So good times. You can check that out at www.ainamedthisshow.com. And you can find out more about us here at Momentous at www.momentous.tv with all the good links. And so just explore around there, find the links to our personal stuff and to where you can find the podcast version of this and so on. We did it, Will.
Awesome. I had so much fun, buddy.
Yeah, it's a different vibe when it's just the two of us, but we don't go on quite as long, which is nice. If people are kind of don't like the hour and a half versions, as sometimes happens, but yeah, definitely miss Gray and Tasia, and we look forward to having them both back soon. So until then, Will and everyone else, we hope your week is truly momentous.